Last Thursday, I made a video breaking down the absolute biggest weekend of the MLB season for the AL wildcard and how that weekend was going to decide the fate of the AL wildcard as a whole. And now that weekend has come and passed and not much has changed. As of Monday night, Toronto just walked off the Yankees in Toronto, and they now have a 3-game lead on the Mariners in the wildcard standings. The Rays still have a half-game lead and have an off day on Monday. The Mariners also had an off day on Monday, so nothing was really going to change for them. Going into the weekend, Toronto had a 2.5-game lead on the Mariners, and Tampa Bay was still up a half game. The only thing that changed is Toronto added a half game to their lead, and the Baltimore Orioles are currently playing the Red Sox up 8-5. We can just assume that the Orioles are going to win this game. They're pretty damn good. So let's say that they're at 3.5 games back. Now listen, I know that the road trip to Kansas City was everything we hoped it wouldn't be. This road trip as a whole was absolutely abysmal. Eugenio Suarez went down, Julio Rodriguez went down, the sky is falling. We gave up 87,000 runs to the Royals in the top of the 6th inning. Everything is falling apart. The Mariners are going to miss the playoffs again. Typical Mariners. Other things that you guys post in the comment section. And yeah, no, realistically, everything is no different than it was a few days ago. In fact, the Mariners' magic number has fallen, and they also now have a 100% chance to make the playoffs instead of a 99.6 or whatever Fangraphs had it at before. For the sake of making this easier, we're just going to leave the Orioles at 4 games here, but let's just assume that they win tonight and it becomes 3.5 games, but I'm just going to say 4 to make numbers easier. Taking the top wildcard spot for the Mariners is gonna be tough. I'm not gonna lie, there's 10 games left, and the Blue Jays have a 3-game lead. Realistically, I mean, this might be obvious, but the Mariners need to win 3 more games than the Blue Jays. The good news is, if the Mariners tie the Blue Jays, the Mariners take the spot away from the Blue Jays. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, the Mariners do win 3 more games than the Blue Jays, they will finish ahead of the Blue Jays in the wildcard standings. For Baltimore, they went into the weekend and played the Houston Astros, and while the Astros didn't help us as much as I had hoped, they still did do okay with Baltimore, and Baltimore entered this week still with 4 games back of the wild card, and because the Mariners own that tiebreaker, it's actually 5. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you really quick, so go ahead and get your pen and paper out. Going into the final 10 games of the season, right, with a 5-game lead on the Baltimore Orioles, if the Mariners win just one of their last 10 games, okay, if they go 1-9, Baltimore has to go at least 6-4 to clinch a wildcard spot. 5-5 is the absolute floor for the Baltimore Orioles in their last 10 games. They have to win at least 5 games to make the playoffs. Basically what I'm saying is, the Mariners are in a pretty damn good spot. So if we keep running the numbers here, if the Mariners win 2 of their last 10 games, they go 2-8, the Orioles would have to go 7-3, so on and so forth. If the Mariners win 3, then the Orioles would have to go 8-2. If the Mariners win 4, the Orioles would have to go 9-1. And if the Mariners win 5 games, the Orioles have to win out the rest of the season and go 10-0. If the Mariners win any more than 5 games, 6+ games over this 10-game homestand, the Mariners are in the playoffs. So listen, I know that we all have this anxiety, right? It's just festering. It's right there in the pit of our stomachs. Oh, same old Mariners, darn it. They're doing it again, just like last year, even though the Mariners went 11-3 in their last 14 games last year. Ooh. And yeah, it's no secret that the Mariners are playing some bad baseball right now, but the good news is so is everybody else in the wild card standings. Over their last 10 games, the Blue Jays are 6-4, the Rays are 4-6, the Mariners are 3-7, and the Orioles are 4-6. Also, don't know if you noticed, but the White Sox are pretty much eliminated from the postseason, and they're 7.5 back of the Mariners with 10 games to play. It's pretty unlikely for the White Sox, bro. Looking at the remaining schedule for the teams in the race, right? We have the Blue Jays. They just opened up their first game and won against the Yankees yesterday. They have 2 more games against the Yankees today and tomorrow. Then they open up a 3-game series against the Red Sox, and then they take on the Orioles at home. So of course, with that series against the Orioles, it's possible that we want the Orioles to win those games. Obviously, this greatly depends on what happens this week, obviously. But if the Orioles are out of it at that point, we would love for the Orioles to sweep the Blue Jays. Or if the Orioles are hot on the Mariners' tails, we need the Blue Jays to take those 3 games and be happy with the 3rd wildcard spot. The Rays end up having a pretty tough schedule. They take the Central winning Guardians on for 3 games starting today. Then they have a 3-game set against the Astros again. They did just play the Astros, and now they're taking them on again. And then they have a 3-game series to finish the season against the Red Sox. The Rays have had a hard time with the Red Sox this year, but of course, as we've seen, anything can happen. At the time of recording, the Orioles are currently up 8-5 on the Red Sox in the bottom of the 5th. They then play the Red Sox today, on Wednesday, and on Thursday. It's a 3-game series after today, and then they take on the New York Yankees, and then they finish the season, as we said, with the Blue Jays. So the Orioles, they don't have an easy road either, which, as we've seen, it doesn't really matter if it's an easy road, but alas, here we are. But the Orioles are really going to be put to the test over these last 9 games of the season. As we know, they have to at least go 500 to make the playoffs. So the Orioles really need to be hoping for a little bit better out of their team lately. And then we get to our Seattle Mariners. As we can see here, this game against the Royals, the wind is out of our sails, right? We know that, but there's a lot of good news for the Mariners. Starting on Tuesday, Eugenio Suarez is going to be activated from the IL. He'll be limited to DH duties, but we all can agree that that's going to be a lot better than seeing Jesse Winker or Abraham Toro swing the bat at the DH spot. They have a 3-game series against the Rangers, then a 3-game series against the Athletics, and they finish with a 4-game series against the Tigers. Collectively, these teams have a winning percentage below 400. I know. Trust me, YouTube, I know. I know what's going on. I feel you. I do. Little sidebar here. On the day that they lost to the Royals, right? The 13-12 loss. I don't know if you guys heard about that. Maybe you didn't. I went on lunch and the Mariners were winning 11-2. I take an hour lunch break at work and I was watching the game, and my entire lunch break was taken up watching the Mariners give up 11 runs to the Royals. So boys, I understand. And not only are we getting a Eugenio Suarez back today against the Rangers, we are also, according to Jerry Dipoto, getting Julio Rodriguez back Monday, October 3rd against the Tigers for the final series of the year, meaning the Mariners should be at relatively full strength for that final series. Cal's thumb is still barking at him, but could you imagine? Could you imagine if it goes down to this final series against the Tigers, Julio gets activated Monday, and then boom, they sweep the Tigers and make the playoffs? Realistically, if we're talking about clinchers for the Mariners, I would assume somewhere here in this Athletic series is when they would probably clinch, or maybe the very start of the Tigers series. Listen, I know it feels like the sky is falling, but it's really not as bad as it looks. Time and time again, the Mariners have played against terrible teams and been really bad. It's just the Mariners' motto this year. But we also know they're good against good teams, and you don't play sub 500 teams in the playoffs. So it hurts right now, but the fact that the Mariners played so well earlier in the season, I think they gave themselves enough of a cushion to deal with something like this. Listen, baseball happens, and we're all just along for the ride. Of course, going throughout this final week, we're going to have different kinds of content up for you, including a clincher video if we end up actually making it, and any other video that kind of pops up along the way. It's so much wait and see mode right now. I'm super excited to go along with you guys on this journey. And you may have heard me talk a little bit about how bad the Mariners are against sub 500 teams. But listen, you don't want to hear me talk about it. You want to hear Joe talk about it with a major breakdown on the screen right here. Trust me, you want to check out this video. It's insane. I appreciate you guys checking out this video. If you made it this far, you're the best, and go Naramers.